The bells of Frosthaven tolled low and heavy, not with mourning but with survival. For 3 days the city had burned its torches through the endless night, holding vigil after the brutal assault of Caelor's Frostbound. And when the dawn finally broke through, pale and bitter, people emerged from their homes like ghosts. They carried the look of those who had stared death in the eye and lived. The great square outside the Hall of Iceborne was choked with men, women, and children. The battered banners of Frosthaven snapped in the wind. For a fleeting moment, pride rose among the people. They had withstood Caelor's fury. The city still stood, but beneath that pride, shadows moved, whispers colder than the northern winds. "Did you see him?" muttered a fishmonger, clutching his frozen stiff cloak. "The wolf? No, not a wolf. A demon wearing Rohan's skin." Others nodded. Some spat in fear. The story of the battle spread fast. How the young lord had fought with claws of ice, eyes burning like winter fire. To some, he was a savior. To others, an abomination. Inside the hall, the council gathered in uneasy silence. Frost clung to the great pillars, as though Caelor's breath still lingered within. Lord Gildred leaned heavily on his staff, his face gaunt but resolute. Beside him, Aelin stood with her head held high, though her hands trembled ever so slightly at her sides. She could hear the whispers even here, echoing through the thick stone walls. "They call him cursed," said Esser Wyeth, one of the older knights, his voice grave. "The people fear him, and fear is a poison. If it spreads unchecked, no sword can hold this city." Gildred's eyes flicked toward Rohan. The young lord stood apart, half shrouded in the shadow of a pillar, his jaw set tight. His hands clenched and unclenched as though he struggled not with men, but with himself. The crystal shard he carried pulsed faintly under his tunic, a heartbeat not his own. "The people forget too quickly who bled for them," Rohan said, his voice low, strained. "If I had not fought as I did, they would all be bones in Caelor's snow." "Aye," Wyeth replied, "and yet the sight of you frightened them near as much as Caelor's army. You wield power they do not understand." Aelin stepped forward before Rohan's anger could rise. Her voice was steady, yet beneath it throbbed urgency. "Then it is our duty to make them understand. Rohan is no monster, he is Iceborne. He fights for Frosthaven, for all of us." A murmur rippled through the chamber, neither assent nor denial. The truth was fragile here, bending with the weight of doubt. Gildred struck the butt of his staff against the floor. "Enough. The city is not yet mended from the last battle, and already tongues seek to undo us. If Frosthaven is divided within, Caelor need not lift a finger to break us." Before more could be said, the heavy doors creaked open. A herald entered, bowing low. Behind him came a procession, cloaked figures bearing banners not of Frosthaven but of the south. Their garments were rich, dyed deep crimson and gold, colors too warm for this frozen land. At their head walked a tall man with hair black as a raven's wing, his smile sharp as a blade. "Envoys from the house of Dareth," the herald announced. The council stirred uneasily. Dareth's lands lay far to the south, beyond the rivers that rarely froze. Their presence here was unexpected, and troubling. The dark-haired emissary bowed with courtly grace. "My lords, my lady," he said smoothly. "I come bearing tidings of friendship in these perilous times." His eyes lingered a moment too long on Rohan, not with fear, but with keen interest, as though studying a beast newly caged. And though no one yet knew it, with his arrival a new game had begun, one of silken words, poisoned promises, and daggers aimed not at the walls, but at the heart of Frosthaven itself. The emissary from House Dareth stood at the center of the hall, every movement deliberate, every smile carefully measured. His name was Lord Malric, though the way he spoke it, with his southern drawl and polished tone, it sounded more like a challenge than an introduction. "My master sends his deepest regrets for your suffering," Malric said, spreading his arms as though he mourned with them. "Word of Caelor's assault reached even our warm shores. Frosthaven's courage is spoken of across the lands." Aelin felt the shift in the room, the council leaning forward, weary yet hungry for flattery, for any sign the wider world had not abandoned them. But she kept her eyes fixed on Malric. His words were sweet, yet his eyes were sharp as talons. "You speak of courage," Rohan said, breaking the silence. "But what of aid? Empty words will not mend our walls nor feed our hungry." The emissary's gaze flickered to him, and a smile tugged at his lips. "Direct, are you? Good. Then let us speak plainly. My master offers supplies, grain, steel, men willing to fight. In exchange, he asks for but a modest bond of alliance. Whispers surged through the chamber. Grain alone could ease the starving winter. Steel could arm their broken militias. Men could stand beside them on the walls when Kaelor returned. But Rohan's jaw tightened. And the cost of this bond? Malric's smile deepened. Merely a union of houses. A marriage to bind Frosthaven and Dareth together. Strong blood joined with southern gold. My master has a daughter, young, beautiful, and eager to serve. Aelin's heart thudded. She saw the council shift eagerly, old men thinking of full stores, of walls manned, of their people safe. Some even dared to smile. It was a temptation wrapped in silk. Rohan's hands curled into fists at his sides. You speak of my freedom as if it were coin to be traded. Malric tilted his head, feigning innocence. Freedom? No, my lord. Legacy. You are young, strong, but unwed. A bride from Dareth would silence the whispers of demons and curses. She would give Frosthaven heirs untainted by fear. The words cut deep, sharper than any blade. Aelin's eyes burned, though she stood silent, her lips pressed thin. To speak now would be to show weakness, to let the snake's words coil around her heart. Lord Gildred raised his hand for quiet. We will hear this proposal fully before judgment is passed. Frosthaven cannot dismiss any ally in these times. The emissary bowed, hiding a glimmer of triumph in his eyes. Then may I suggest a feast? Let us break bread together, and speak as friends rather than strangers. Tonight, as he withdrew, leaving a trail of murmurs behind, Rohan turned toward the council. His voice was iron. Do not think me blind. He comes not with gifts, but with chains gilded in gold. To take his offer would be to sell Frosthaven's soul. Better a gilded chain than a grave, muttered Esser Wyeth grimly. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Later, as the council dispersed, Aelin caught Rohan's arm. His skin burned cold under her touch, a paradox that chilled her to the bone. His eyes glowed faintly, like embers buried beneath snow. They will press you, she whispered. They see safety in his offer, no matter the cost. You must stand firm. Rohan's gaze softened, if only for her. I will not be bought, Aelin. Not by gold, not by marriage, not by fear. But Kaelor is not the only serpent circling Frosthaven. If the council falters. He trailed off, his breath misting in the cold air. A howl echoed faintly from beyond the city walls, not of man, nor wolf, but something in between. Both of them froze, knowing what it meant. The power within him was stirring again, restless, hungry. And somewhere in the shadows of Frosthaven, Malric smiled to himself. He had seen the glow in Rohan's eyes. He had heard the whispers of wolf and demon. The council could be swayed with fear and promises, but Rohan would need something more. Something far deadlier. The great hall of Frosthaven had not seen such a gathering in many winters. The hearth fires blazed high, tapestries swayed in the drafts, and long tables groaned under what little food remained. It was a feast in name more than in truth, salted fish, boiled roots, black bread, and thin ale. Yet the people of Frosthaven had been taught to dress hunger in ceremony. Malric, draped in sable and silk, made the room shine with his presence. He raised his goblet, his voice carrying like a bard's song. To Frosthaven, indomitable as the mountains that cradle it, may South and North share one table, one bond, one destiny. The council answered with nods and forced smiles. Some even clapped. Aelin watched from Rohan's side, her eyes narrowing. The emissary had the manner of a man who knew the game of quoits well, the tilt of his hand, the rhythm of his words, each crafted to draw men toward him. Rohan lifted his cup but did not drink. His silence was a blade, sharper than Malric's silk. As servants moved between the tables, whispers wound their way like smoke. Aelin caught fragments. A bride from Dareth, rich dowry, soldiers too. An end to whispers of witchcraft. She clenched her jaw. Even the scent of promise was enough to bend weary men. Halfway through the meal, Malric rose again. My lords, my ladies, forgive a man too fond of stories, but may I share a tale? It is of an ancient hero, a warrior cursed by a dark jewel, who fought bravely but was undone not by his foes, but by his own pride. His people adored him, yet whispered of sorcery. In the end, they turned from him, and he perished alone, unloved. The words were honey, but their aim was venom. Eyes flickered toward Rohan, some guilty, some wary. Rohan's hand tightened on his goblet until it cracked, ale spilling like blood upon the table. "And what is the lesson of your tale, emissary?" His voice was low, dangerous. Malric's smile was gentle, falsely so. "That even the greatest heroes need allies. That power without trust is ruin. That a man cannot lead if his people fear his shadow." The silence after was suffocating. Aelin could hear the fire crackle, could feel the weight of the council watching, waiting. At last, Rohan rose. He stood tall, the hall suddenly smaller in his presence. His eyes gleamed with the faintest trace of frostlight. "Then let me tell you a tale, Malric. Of wolves in the snow. The south may bring gold, may bring words sweet as honey, but when the storm comes, it is not honey that keeps a man alive. It is fangs. It is blood. It is fire." The air turned colder, breath misting in the hall. For a heartbeat, it seemed frost itself crept across the flagstones. Malric's smile did not waver, but a shadow flickered in his eyes. Aelin slipped her hand toward her dagger beneath the table, ready. She saw the way Malric's fingers curled at his side, how his men, quiet shadows by the door, shifted as though awaiting a signal. The feast had become a battleground of silence, words clashing sharper than steel. Then, the horn sounded. A single, low note from the watchtower above the gates. All eyes turned toward the sound. The gates of Frosthaven had been breached. The horn's echo still lingered when the doors of the hall burst wide. A rush of cold wind swept through, carrying with it snowflakes and the sound of panic. A guard stumbled in, his helm dented, blood trickling down his cheek. "They're through," he gasped, clutching the frame for balance. "The outer gate, it's fallen." The hall erupted. Councillors leapt to their feet, servants dropped platters, and the air filled with shouts. Rohan's sword was in his hand before the last syllable left the guard's lips. The frostlight along its edge pulsed faintly, hungry for battle. His gaze swept the chamber, not toward the gates, but toward Malric. The emissary's men were already in motion. Too swift, too prepared. "Seize them!" Aelin shouted, her dagger flashing as she sprang up. Chaos answered. Half the guards lunged toward the doors, the other half toward Malric's retinue. Steel rang on steel within heartbeats. Benches toppled, cups shattered, the feast drowned in violence. Malric did not flinch. He remained standing by the high table, his smile thin as a blade. "A tragedy," he said, almost wistfully. "To see allies turn upon each other when enemies stand at the gates." "You call yourself an ally?" Rohan snarled, stepping onto the dais. "Then why are your wolves already baring their fangs?" The emissary's men fought with silent precision, blades curved and foreign, their cloaks hiding armor black as night. They moved not like guests, but like assassins. Rohan cut through one, frost leaping from his blade to seize the man's chest. Another lunged at him, only to be intercepted by Aelin, who drove her dagger beneath the man's jaw with merciless grace. Still, the tide was wrong. Too many shadows, too many blades. And then the second horn sounded. This one closer, louder. The gates within the city had been breached as well. Panic swelled into terror. Lords shoved aside servants to flee. Some screamed for order, others prayed aloud. The hall that had moments ago echoed with feasting now reeked of fear and blood. Rohan's voice thundered above it all. "Hold your ground. This hall is ours." His men rallied, dragging tables into barricades, shields raised. Sparks flew as steel clashed, cries of pain cut short. Through it all, Malric stood serene, untouched, watching as though the carnage were theater staged for him alone. Aelin's breath came ragged. She carved down another of Malric's shadows, then pressed close to Rohan. "It's no raid. This was planted, seeded from within." Rohan's eyes, hard as winter stone, locked upon Malric. "Then it ends tonight." He surged forward, frostlight blazing brighter now, his blade aimed not for Malric's men, but for the serpent himself. The emissary did not flee. He raised his hand, palm marked with a sigil unseen until now, black and red, the shape of a coiled serpent. Power shimmered there, faint yet unmistakable. Aelin's heart froze. This was no mere emissary. The clash was inevitable, steel against shadow, frost against serpent fire. And above, beyond the walls, the storm howled louder. Something far worse than Malric's treachery was clawing at Frosthaven's gates. The third horn split the night like a scream. This time, no one mistook it. The invaders were inside the city. The clash in the hall froze for a heartbeat. Even Malric's men turned their heads, momentarily distracted by the sound of panic rising from the streets beyond the keep. Then the first roar came. Not human, not animal, something in between. The great doors shuddered as if struck by a giant's hand. Wood splintered, hinges groaned. The guards braced with spears, but when the doors burst inward, their line shattered like twigs. Figures poured in, not men, not holy. Their bodies were twisted, wrapped in plates of black ice that pulsed faintly with blue veins. Eyes glowed hollow white, jaws stretched too far, teeth like shards of frozen bone. The Frostbound, Kaelor's abominations. The hall erupted again, this time in true terror. Screams tore the air as counselors scrambled over one another. Servants dropped to their knees. The smell of blood mingled with the bitter sting of unnatural frost. Rohan's grip tightened on his sword, the frostlight along its edge thrumming as though it recognized its kin. He knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that this was Kaelor's hand. "Stand with me," Rohan bellowed, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Or die like sheep." Some rallied. Most fled. The Frostbound surged forward, their claws slicing through steel, their icy touch blackening flesh in seconds. One leapt upon a guard and ripped him apart, scattering blood across the rushes. Another crashed through the barricade of tables with terrifying ease. Malric had not moved. He stood tall at the dais, serpent sigil still faintly glowing at his palm, his eyes fixed on Rohan with almost scholarly interest. "So the sorcerer unveils his true hand," he murmured, half to himself. "How predictable." Aelin whirled toward him, blade slick with blood. "Did you summon them?" Malric's smile was thin. "I merely opened the door." The storm was already waiting to enter. Rage burned in Rohan's chest. He cut down two Frostbound in a single arc, their bodies cracking into shards. Yet the black crystal at his chest pulsed harder now, stronger, as if it drank in the blood and the frost alike. His vision sharpened, his muscles surged, but with it came that laughter again, distant, mocking. Kaelor's. He staggered for half a heartbeat, fighting the pull. Aelin's hand caught his arm, steadying him. Her eyes burned with defiance. "Don't let him in, Rohan. Fight." The Frostbound pressed closer, their howls rattling the rafters. Rohan roared back, meeting them head-on, frost spilling from his blade in a storm of its own. The hall became a maelstrom of ice and firelight, of blood and shadow. Still, Malric watched, unmoving, unhurried, as if he knew this was but the beginning. And then, the keep itself trembled. A deeper sound, heavier, rising from the streets outside. Something vast was moving through Frosthaven, breaking stone and timber as though they were kindling. The Frostbound were not the worst of it. The tremor rolled through the keep again, rattling the chandeliers, toppling goblets from the council table. Dust sifted down from the rafters like falling snow. Even the Frostbound paused, their heads jerking toward the sound. Some hissed, as if in recognition of a master's call. Then the roar came. It wasn't a sound meant for human ears, deeper, older, echoing like a cavern collapsing. The very stones beneath Frosthaven seemed to groan. "Gods preserve us," whispered a counselor, sinking to his knees. Rohan's blood turned to ice. He had heard such a roar once before, in the dreamscapes Kaelor had forced upon him when the crystal first bound itself to his chest. A beast of shadow and frost, a titan dragged from the forgotten age when men cowered in caves and prayed the sun would rise. The walls shook again. Aelin steadied herself against a column, her eyes wide. "He's brought it here. Into Frosthaven." The Frostbound shrieked as if in triumph, then hurled themselves at the defenders with renewed frenzy. Steel clashed, screams filled the air. Rohan fought like a man possessed. His blade carved arcs of ice fire through the abominations, shattering them to fragments. But every strike fed the crystal, and with every surge of power he felt Kaelor's hand press harder against his mind. The laughter grew clearer, the whispers more insistent. "Yes, unleash me. Call it forth. Only together can we master the beast." Rohan gritted his teeth and struck harder, refusing the voice, even as frost curled from his lips. At the dais, Malric raised his arms high, serpent sigil burning like molten silver. His men fell back in formation, their faces calm amid the carnage. "Behold the gift of the Black King," he shouted over the din. "Your lord cannot save you. He is the doom you fear. Shut your cursed mouth." Aelin roared, charging toward him. She cut down 2 frostbound in her path, blade flashing, and leapt onto the dais. Malric sidestepped gracefully, as if he had expected her fury. Their blades rang in a blur of sparks. "You think him your savior," Malric sneered, parrying her strike. "But every breath he takes feeds Kaelor. The crystal doesn't protect him, it consumes him. And when he breaks, so will your city." Their clash spilled across the high table, smashing goblets and scattering firelit banners. Below, Rohan's men began to falter. The frostbound were endless, crawling through shattered windows, bursting from the broken doors. And outside, that terrible roar drew closer. A shadow passed the arrow slits, something vast enough to blot out the moonlight. Rohan's heart thundered. He could feel the beast's approach in his bones. And worse, he could feel the crystal yearning for it, pulling, beckoning like a lover's hand. "We are one," the voice whispered. "You and I. Call it, and we will bind it. Refuse, and it will tear you limb from limb." He staggered, knees buckling, vision doubling between the bloody hall and a frozen wasteland in his mind. The beast loomed in both. Somewhere far away, Aelin screamed his name. Then the outer wall of the keep exploded inward in a spray of stone and timber. The monster had arrived. The wall came down in a thunder of stone. Masonry shattered, beams snapped, and snow blasted through the breach in a howling gale. Through the dust and ruin, the beast stepped into Frosthaven. It was larger than any hall could hold, its body a tangle of shadow and icebound sinew. Horns curled like frozen rivers from its skull, eyes glowing pale blue as if lit by the moons themselves. Frost steamed from its maw, each breath a gale that froze banners and turned torches to brittle crystal. Men screamed, some fled, others were crushed beneath falling stone. The creature bellowed, a sound that ripped through marrow and soul alike. It turned its head, and its gaze fixed on Rohan. For an instant, the din of battle dulled. The frostbound halted their attacks, bowing their heads as though their true master had entered the hall. Even Malric stepped back, lips curving into something between awe and worship. "There," he whispered, blood dripping from his cheek. "The Lord of Winter has come." Rohan's sword trembled in his grip. His men were falling back, panic seizing even hardened warriors. Yet the crystal against his chest pulsed with eagerness, its rhythm syncing with the beast's steps. "Ars," Kaelor's voice purred inside his skull. "Do you feel it, wolf? That is mine. And by blood, it is yours. Call it, bend it. Together, we can leash even this nightmare." Rohan staggered, clutching his breast. The crystal was burning hot now, searing through leather and flesh. He wanted to hurl it from him, to rid himself of its cursed voice. But the thought of facing the beast without it froze his heart colder than any winter. Aelin fought free of Malric, driving him back with a vicious slash that left his serpent brooch split in half. She darted to Rohan's side, her face pale in the frostlight. "Don't listen to it," she shouted above the beast's roar. "Rohan, it wants you broken. If you use it now, you'll never come back." The monster reared, its claws gouging through stone columns as if they were driftwood. The keep shuddered, the roof groaning as snow and ice cascaded down. Rohan's men cried out, some begging him to use the power, others to cast it away. The hall was chaos. Malric screaming for the beast to finish what it had begun, the frostbound kneeling in worship. The council scattering in terror. Aelin gripping Rohan's arm as if her strength alone could anchor him. The beast's gaze never left him. It stepped forward, and with each stride, the stone floor cracked under its weight. "Say the word," Kaelor hissed, his voice now molten in Rohan's skull. "Unleash me, and you will be their savior." Rohan's vision blurred. For a heartbeat, he saw himself not as he was, but as Kaelor wanted him to be, standing atop the corpse of the beast, wreathed in dark frost, his men kneeling in fear and reverence. A lord no longer, but a king carved of winter. He clenched his jaw, shaking his head, fighting the vision. But the beast was upon them now, its maw opening wide, frost fire building in its throat. He had a breath, one heartbeat, to choose. The beast's breath seethed in its throat, a storm of frozen fire ready to burst. Rohan's hand clenched the crystal. The heat was unbearable now, blistering his skin, and yet he held it as if it were his only anchor. He looked into the creature's pale, death-lit eyes and, for the span of a heartbeat, saw his own reflection there, small, mortal, doomed. Aelin's voice cut through the din. "Rohan, look at me, not it." Her grip tightened on his arm. Her eyes, green and fierce, locked with his. You are more than this curse. Don't let it decide for you. The crystal pulsed like a second heart, Kaelor's laughter echoing in his mind. Do you hear her? Fragile words, empty promises. She would see you die as a man, when you could live as a god. Say it. Say my name, and I will show you what kingship tastes like. The beast lunged. Its maw spread, jaws lined with icicles sharp as spears. Rohan's lips parted, caught between a cry and a command. Then the roof gave way. Snow and timber cascaded down, striking the beast's flank and staggering it sideways. The frost fire blast shot wide, shattering half the council chamber wall and spraying shards of frozen stone across the floor. The shock broke something inside Rohan's haze. He drew a breath, and hurled the crystal away. It clattered across the flagstones, spinning, its glow dimming as if shocked by rejection. No, he spat, voice raw. I am no god. I am Rohan of Frosthaven. And I will not be your pawn. Kaelor's howl echoed in his skull, furious, wounded, then fell silent. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of the beast's labored growl and the groan of collapsing stone. Aylin's eyes widened. Relief and terror mingled there. Then fight as yourself, she said, drawing her blade anew. And I'll fight with you. The beast roared, rearing back despite its wounds, frost fire building again in its chest. Rohan raised his sword. His men, seeing their lord still standing, still human, rallied. They closed ranks around him, shields up, spears braced. Malric screamed over the chaos, face twisted with madness. Fool, you spurned destiny. The Winter Lord would have crowned you. Now you will kneel, in death. The beast slammed forward, crushing men beneath its claws, frost spraying like a storm tide. Rohan met it head on, shield raised, sword flashing. Sparks and frost fire lit the hall in a storm of silver and blue. The choice had been made. He would fight as a man, and if death claimed him, it would be his own soul, not Kaelor's shadow, that perished here. But as the clash rang out, unnoticed in the ruin, the crystal began to glow once more. Not dimmed, not silent. It pulsed, faint but steady, as if waiting. The council hall was no longer a chamber of debate but a tomb in the making. Walls buckled, pillars toppled, and the air rang with screams and steel. The beast tore through men like parchment, its claws raking shields aside, frost fire gouting from its maw to freeze soldiers where they stood. Each strike left corpses crystallized in mid-motion, statues of their final terror. Rohan pressed forward through the carnage, his blade a streak of silver in the storm. Every stroke was defiance, every step a denial of Kaelor's whispered promises. Aylin fought at his side, her sword flashing arcs of green flame as if her very will burned against the ice. Yet the monster was not their only foe. Malric crept through the ruin like a carrion wolf, his eyes fixed not on the battle, but on the crystal lying forgotten among the rubble. It pulsed faintly, a steady heartbeat that seemed to call to him alone. He licked his lips, muttering, if the boy refuses the crown, then I shall wear it. Crouching, he darted forward, weaving through the chaos. No blade turned his way, no beast strike noticed him. All eyes were on the clash at the center, where Rohan and Aylin drove the monster back step by step. Rohan's shield shattered beneath a strike. He stumbled, nearly falling into the beast's snapping jaws. Aylin dragged him clear, though the force of it sent them both sprawling. The beast reared again, preparing the killing blow. And then, a scream split the chamber. Not a human cry, something darker. Malric held the crystal aloft, its glow searing white, burning into his palm. His face twisted with both agony and ecstasy, veins blackening as the power coursed through him. Mine, he shrieked, voice doubled, echoing like a chorus. Mine, by right of will. Kaelor, hear me, I am your heir. The crystal blazed, brighter than fire, and for a moment the beast faltered, as if recognizing its new master. Rohan's heart plummeted. He saw the path he had refused now claimed by another, a man without conscience, without restraint. Aylin whispered hoarsely, if he binds to it, Frosthaven falls. No walls, no oaths, no bloodline will matter. He'll burn it all. The beast turned its head, eyes drawn to the light. Instead of striking Rohan, it lumbered toward Malric, compelled by the crystal's call. Malric laughed, extending his hand as though welcoming a hound to heel. But Kaelor's voice boomed from nowhere and everywhere at once. Not heir. Not king. You are nothing but a vessel. Malric convulsed. His eyes rolled white as the crystal's light lanced through him, veins bursting with molten frost. His laugh became a scream. Yet even writhing, he clutched the stone tighter, unwilling to yield. The beast lowered itself before him, not in attack, but in reverence. Rohan staggered to his feet, horror burning in his chest. Gods, he's doing it. He's binding it. Aylin's knuckles whitened around her blade. Then we must cut him down before the binding is complete. The hall shuddered, frost creeping up the walls, fire glowing in the cracks of stone. Malric's scream twisted into something inhuman. His flesh began to harden into crystalline ice, yet his eyes burned with savage triumph. Rohan took a step forward, heart-pounding. He had cast the crystal away, and now it had chosen his worst enemy. The beast raised its head to the ruin of the ceiling and roared, the sound carrying for miles. Frosthaven itself seemed to tremble in answer. The hall trembled as if the foundations themselves feared what was coming. Malric stood at the center, the crystal clutched to his chest, a black-white flame licking his fingers. The beast crouched before him, obedient, yet the fire in its eyes mirrored both fury and anticipation. Rohan stumbled forward, every step weighed down by dread. Aylin's hand gripped his arm, a tether to reality, a reminder that even here, they had one last choice. We can't wait, she hissed. Strike now, or it's all lost. The air pulsed with magic. Frost burned against stone, shards rattled loose from the ceiling. Malric's voice rose, chanting in an ancient tongue, one that twisted the very marrow of the hall. By the crystal, by power, by the will unbroken, I claim the throne of Frosthaven. The crystal pulsed violently, and the beast shivered. Frost flared like living lightning across its scales, setting the hall ablaze with spectral ice. Rohan's blade shone dimly at first, then brighter, a response to the mounting threat. The heart in his chest throbbed in resonance with the crystal, a warning, a call. You cannot wield that, Rohan shouted, voice cracking. It will consume you. Malric's grin was lunatic, eyes wide with blind ambition. Better to consume than to kneel. He thrust the crystal skyward, and the hall convulsed. Frost swirled into towering spires, ripping apart banners, shattering pillars, freezing men in mid-step. Soldiers screamed, torn between fighting and fleeing. Aylin whispered sharply, we need to sever the bond. Rohan, the heart. It's the only way. Rohan's chest burned as if the heart itself had caught fire. Sweat and frost mingled on his skin, his breath ragged. He could feel Kaelor's influence in the air, his laughter slicing through the din like a dagger. Yes, let him try. Let him bleed. Let him break himself. The choice was clear. To strike Malric directly was suicide. To hesitate was death for all of Frosthaven. Rohan's eyes locked on Aylin. She nodded, grim but resolute. Together, they surged forward, weaving through the chaos of shattering ice and panicked soldiers. Malric's chant faltered, the crystal pulsed against him, now fighting his will. The beast snarled, sensing the shift. Frost cracks appeared along Malric's veins, spreading like dark rivers beneath his skin. No, I am master. Rohan leapt, drawing every ounce of strength from the heart. The blade burned with cold fury as he drove it toward the crystal. Aylin cast her flames in tandem, a green torrent of magic striking the stone, splintering its edges. The impact was cataclysmic. Frost and fire collided, a hurricane of ice shards, screaming stone, and molten energy. Malric's scream pierced it all, a sound of unhinged triumph turning to sheer terror. The crystal shattered, shards scattering like frozen starlight across the hall. The beast recoiled, unbound. Frost shrieked as it dissipated into nothingness. Silence fell, heavy, suffocating, absolute. Rohan fell to his knees, chest heaving, the heart in his ribcage thundering in exhaustion. Aylin knelt beside him, hand on his shoulder. The hall was a ruin, but the city beyond had not yet fallen. Malric lay twisted among shards of the crystal, smoke rising from his frozen veins. He would live, but broken, a cautionary tale of ambition's price. Kaelor's laughter echoed faintly, carried on the wind. The wolf survives, for now, he whispered. But the game has only begun. Rohan looked out across the ruined hall, frost-laced shards glittering like stars. The council would not forgive the chaos. Frosthaven would demand answers. And somewhere, deep in shadow, Kaelor's next move awaited. But for now, they had survived. And that survival, fleeting, fragile, would have to be enough. The hall shuddered once more, and in the distant towers, torches burned a steady, defiant light against the encroaching frost. Malric's goblet fell, spilling crimson wine that looked too much like blood.